Class example 2.4.2, factor each of the following trinomials if possible. We're getting the hang of this now, so let's see how this goes. Question A, x squared minus 8x plus 15. We know we are always looking for the greatest common factor first. I have a 1, a negative 8, and a 15. No good. I've got an x squared, an x, and then a constant. Okay, the next thing I'm looking for is there's not 4 terms, so I'm not factoring by grouping. And then the last thing I really want to make sure that we start to focus on is this lead coefficient here is a 1. When it's a 1, this makes it a lot easier to factor the trinomial. We'll see in our next couple of examples when we stop having that nice 1 in front, it gets a little bit more complicated. All right, now that we know what's going on here, we're going to find two numbers that multiply to positive 15 and add to negative 8. Okay, we start with our multiplication list. I get 1 and 15. I get 3 times 5. But I also get a negative 1 and a negative 15 and a negative 3 times a negative 5. And I need to figure out which combination is going to add to negative 8. Well, 1 plus 15 is 16, and 3 plus 5 is 8. Negative 1 minus 15 is negative 16, and negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. So although we're very tempted to say it's 3 plus 5 equals 8, it's not. It's actually negative 3 plus negative 5 is equaling to negative 8. Okay. Once we've got that established, you can go ahead and factor by grouping if you like and break it apart. Or we can see we have that nice lead coefficient of a 1, so I can break this apart into minus 3 and minus 5. So x squared minus 8x plus 15 factors down to x minus 3, x minus 5. Question B, we've seen something like this where we've got the double variables here. So again, we always look for greatest common factor. M squared m and no m. N and n squared, so no n here. And I've got a 1, a negative 10, and a 24. So again, no greatest common factor. Doesn't have 4 terms and has a nice lead coefficient of 1. So we're going to find two numbers that multiply to positive 24, but this time they have to add to negative 10. 1 and 24, 2 and 12. I get 24, 3 and 8. I get 4 and 6, and I've exhausted my list except for the negatives. Negative 1 and negative 24, negative 2 and negative 12. Now, I want you to notice, if you see it, you don't need to keep writing them all of them down. I will always write them all down just in case there's a simple mistake that happens. Especially like you'll see in question C, we're multiplying to a negative. So if you see the numbers, go ahead. You don't need to write all the exhausted list here. If you need the extra practice, don't hesitate. So here I've got negative 4 multiplied by negative 6 is going to equal to positive 24, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And negative 4 plus negative 6 is negative 10. Okay, so we're going to open up our set of brackets. I've got an m squared, so I'm going to write m in the beginning. I've got a minus 4 and I've got a minus 6 as my two numbers. Don't forget, though, you have an n squared and an n. And like we saw in our previous class example, we're just going to account for that extra variable. Nothing else changes. Okay, question C, x squared plus 2x minus 8. So I look for greatest common factor. I don't see one. I look for 4 terms. I don't see that. And I also see a nice lead coefficient of a 1, so that's good news for us. You can start to see the repetition here. So I'm now going to multiply or find two numbers that multiply to negative 8 that also add to positive 2. This time it's not 1 times 8. 1 times 8 is positive 8, not negative 8. Okay? So I either need to have negative 1 times positive 8 or positive 1 times negative 8 to get to my negative 8. I also know 2 times 4 would equal to positive 8, but that's not the case. So it's either negative 2 times positive 4 or positive 2 times negative 4 that's going to get me to my negative 8. Okay, so these are all the combinations that work nicely to get to a multiplication of negative 8. Notice here the signs rotate. Instead of me repeating the lists and then just adding negatives all over the place, I had to be strategic about where I was adding them. Only one of those two numbers can have the negative sign. So now if I decide that I'm going to add these guys together, I'm going to get negative 1 plus 8 is positive 7. and 1 plus negative 8 is negative 7. I get negative 2 plus 4 is positive 2, and I get 2 plus negative 4 is negative 2. So now, although the 2 and the 4 are definitely going to work for us, we have to make sure that the negative is on the 2, not the 4. Okay? Then I can see I'm just breaking it apart into my nice 2 sets of brackets. There's only one variable, that's an x in the first term. Then I can put minus 2 and plus 4. You're more than welcome to put plus 4 and minus 2, but you cannot put plus 2 minus 4. Symbols or the signs in front of the numbers are important.